if any of you ever get a chance, looking at the history of the South Florida Water Management District, and you have some wonderful maps, it's very interesting how it got started. We're all living in a flooded wetland down here. Nature doesn't care that we have million-dollar homes and horses. Nature is going to follow its flow, and they have a very big job to do integrating on many, many different levels with federal mandates, the state, local communities, and quite honestly, I admire you taking that role and responsibility because it's a really huge, and the more that people get educated on what's happening around them, it's our habitat, we live here, but there isn't some government that's going to fix it. We have to come up with solutions. So this afternoon, Pam has agreed to stay and work with the groups, our breakout groups, which are at this point 2 main ones, but you'll get a chance to comment and give your ideas if we want more. One will be on the land, water management, emergency planning, all the issues that have to do with nature and what we can do about it. And the other one will look at economic, community planning, models, and what can we do with stabilizing and making sustainable communities and trail systems and things. So we'll have both of those this afternoon, and if there's a certain interest you have, then we can even break out into little smaller groups and try to work that way too. So keeping with the water issue, one of the things that happened last year was emergency planning. Got a lot of calls because of horses and water. And we're really fortunate to have Diane Sauve with us today. She's the Director of Animal Control. She's working with the SART program. She's going to tell you a little bit about that. And she's also received the Animal Kindness Award, I think, in 2010 for her work with animal. No? Yes, you did.
Okay, let me clarify that. Where do you want me before we do this?
You are absolutely perfect.
Well, that's a lie. The Animal Kindness Award was actually given to me back in 1995, I think, and that was before I started my work with Palm Beach County Animal Care and Control. Can everybody hear me? Yeah? Okay. I'm usually fairly loud. Tiffany is passing out some handouts, and this has my presentation on it, so maybe we can follow along.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but there is a car, a Nissan Sentra,
Silver Nissan
Maxima, that if it doesn't get moved, it's going to be towed. So does anybody have a Nissan Maxima? Not ours. We're good to go. All right, thank you.
All right, so I did not bring my presentation on a flash drive. I apologize for that. But you can follow along with me as we go through this, and I keep looking up there like I'm expecting it to fly up there. For those of you who probably know the name Palm Beach County Animal Care and Control but don't really know exactly what we do, or you just assume that we're the dog catchers who come out, I just want to clarify a few things and maybe enlighten you. Palm Beach County Animal Care and Control is the largest governmental animal control facility in the state of Florida. We provide more services and more resources than any other, again, government agency in Florida and more than most in the United States. We're very proud of the things that we do, but it really is a lot more than simply monitoring dogs and whether they have tags and so forth. We have many layers to what we do. Again, we are, I guess you could say, the animal cops in Palm Beach County. When you see the cruelty cases that are publicized, that's us that are handling those cases. We're the ones that respond to neglect cases. Most recently was a big horse neglect case, and many of you probably in this room responded to that. And there were so many wonderful people in Wellington who helped us with that, and we're really grateful. We handle rabies surveillance for all of Palm Beach County, which is a very big job. We also handle licensing for all animal businesses in Palm Beach County, and that includes commercial horse boarding. So a lot of people don't realize that if you are boarding more than 4 horses that are not your own, then you must have a permit through our agency. We do make it easy, and so it's not anything to be frightened about. So that kind of just tells you a little bit about who we are. We have 123 employees. We cover 2,300 square miles of enforcement area, and we shelter 25,000 animals a year that come into our facility. Now, we are also the ESF 17 for Palm Beach County. That means that we handle all animal related issues in the county during a disaster. And handling a disaster starts at the local level, as many of you realize. When something happens, the goal is to try to handle it locally before you escalate things up the ladder. And we are the people that it starts with. One of the things that we do as the ESF 17 is we maintain a list of resources and animal agencies in the county, and we work closely with those. We develop procedures, and we do our best to work with all animal agencies and people who work with animals of any type in the county to help them develop a plan. We prioritize missions during a disaster, and as many of you know, during Isaac, the priority was horses. That was, I believe, a real learning lesson for this county. We've been working on planning. I've been with Animal Care and Control for 10 years, and I can tell you that the Equestrian group has been the hardest for us to reach and to get cooperation with, primarily because equestrians are independent. As a person who, up until a month ago, had horses, it's my first time in 18 years that I'm horseless, I understand the unique needs. I live out in this area, so, you know, I get it. I really do. But trying to bring equestrians together as a group for disaster planning has not been successful, and I think that we will be now. And so I think the universe sent us a message during Isaac that we all need to be paying attention to. We maintain documentation, and we work with other animal agencies in the county to help them become self-sufficient, other animal agencies or animal groups such as we have in this room. Our goal is to try to make people as self-sufficient as possible, because the reality is, in the aftermath of a disaster, we are on our own until we have proven that we need help above what we can provide locally. Our operational responsibilities, and I'm going blind at my age, so I apologize. We do monitor all animal care, regulation, and enforcement and veterinary activities that are being conducted during emergency operations. We identify animal hospital resources, and many times we're it. After Francis and Jean, there were no veterinary hospitals that were able to open right away, so we set up a MASH unit to be able to treat animals that came in, you know, that were injured. We disseminate information about the emergency information, and we coordinate the movement of animal supplies, equipment, and support personnel to staging areas. Overview again of what we do: conduct veterinary care, disaster control, organize veterinary care, identify equipment and supplies, maintain emergency hospital care capabilities, assess what's going on, collect and dispose of dead animals, which we found out during Isaac. There was a huge fish die-off, and even though fish doesn't really fall under what we do, the need was there. So we addressed it. We found vendors. There actually was a vendor that collects dead fish. And so the bottom line is you do what you have to do. And sometimes you learn as you go along when new situations are presented. On the next page, one of the first, I call it on-the-job trainings that I had when I took this job over was the response to Hurricane Charlie on the West Coast. West Coast was hit. Nothing really had happened since Andrew, which means complacency had set in. So it was a very good learning lesson for our team at Animal Care and Control, because we were asked by the state to respond and to help on the West Coast during Charlie. And it was an eye-opener. And it taught us, you know, some of the things that we needed to be doing in our own backyard. These would have all been beautiful pictures. I brought the PowerPoint. After Charlie, most of you remember, if you were living here, we had Hurricane Francis. That was a real eye-opener. At the shelter, we were without power for 11 days. And when you think about the number of animals that come into our shelter, we average anywhere from 50 to 100 animals that are unwanted or lost that arrive at our shelter every day. Average population of 600 animals on site at any given time. You can imagine how that would be with no power. It was difficult, to say the least. Gene followed shortly after that. One of our buildings was destroyed. Not one of the buildings housing animals, thank goodness. But we had massive roof leaks, another 7 days without power, lift station malfunctioning, and widespread flooding. We had to take care of 600 animals with flashlights and, you know, no air conditioning, so it was hard. So, you know, we were once again pounded by storms, and we had a lot of lessons to learn. I know time is short, and I'm from the South. I can be very long-winded, so I'm going to skip through some of this. During the storms that we've experienced, including most recently, all species are impacted. During Francis and Jean, casualties were extensive. A lot of people left their animals outside, which was really not a good thing. And what we found during those storms, and we found during Isaac, was that pre-disaster neglect of animals became very apparent in our response, even most recently with Tropical Storm Isaac. We were going into areas that had widespread flooding, and Deer Run was especially impacted, and that's the area that I live in, out in that area. But the northern areas that were touched on, water management district, the way the water flows, northern areas of the acreage and areas that frankly I didn't even know people lived in, were very impacted. And what we found was abject neglect of animals in some of these areas that we responded to. So that's one thing that you often find in the aftermath of a storm, is you find pre-disaster neglect. Now, in looking at the situation today and planning for community teams, which I believe is, if I'm understanding correctly, the goal is to work with equestrians to develop a community plan. And in doing that, we have to evaluate the types of disasters which occur within your location. It's not always flooding, it's not always a hurricane. It can be many things that happen. You evaluate the number of animals in your community. That's a small portion of why it's important for our agency to know commercial boarding facilities or even small residential boarding facilities. It gives us a way to gauge how many animals are in the community and what the impact could be and what the needs might be. It allows us to meet with people to say, this is important, we need to pay attention, we need to get a plan. And it allows us to establish neighborhood teams and team leaders and to set an annual training up, which is very important. These are done with local animal groups already, dogs, cats, private shelters that we monitor and regulate, animal rescue groups. These groups we work with. It's now very important that we do this with equestrians. We need to evaluate the vulnerabilities and have to take an honest look, identify leaders, assess the training, establish contact with the ESF 17, which is us. And again, you know, we can be helpful. We want to be helpful to you guys. Admit the shortcomings. Again, everybody has shortcomings. We all have flaws in our plans, and if we are honest and look at them, and we work towards resolution, it can be done. And in preparation, we have to establish priorities, and you have to look at what needs to be ready. And our work with the State Agricultural Response Team, these are the things that we look at. And in fact, my SART team is in Orlando at the state SART meeting right now, which is why you got me fumbling through this. But you know, we work to learn more. It's an evolving document is the best way that I can explain it. So we establish our priorities looking at tangible and intangible items. And we plan for confusion, because I can assure you that there's going to be confusion no matter what happens, no matter what the best laid plans are, there is going to be confusion. An example in Isaac was people called the Emergency Operations Center and said, we have really serious flooding going on out in the western community. And someone in the Emergency Operations Center said, you know, we don't have any information about that. And there became confusion. And the next thing I knew, my cell phone was ringing, my personal cell phone, because people knew that I lived out there. And the criticism later on was people were calling you instead of the EOC. So that was some confusion right there. But we got the job done, and we learned from it. And we learned that there needed to be a heightened awareness and quicker timing with information that's going into the Emergency Operations Center. Go ahead. I know I'm long-winded. Yes. So anyway, so you have to plan for the confusion and keep accurate records and learn from it. You have to acquire the necessary equipment. And again, plan. And in your response, work together, work as a team, work with us, make sure we have, you know, good guidelines, and implement those guidelines and make sure that they're written. Consider your equipment and other needs, which I believe we'll do breakout sessions today, and then know that recovery is the most difficult part. Planning should be the easy part. We work together, we plan, we look at everything. Recovery is always the most difficult part of everything, and that's where the communication and planning for that communication is a must. So I think that gives you enough of a little bit of an overview. The rest you can read, and I thank you. I'll look forward to